Hey guys, by request, I've been asked to respond to this Chinese tradcon, the Chinese historian. Of course, he's going to be talking about population collapse. Translation, the guys can't get the girls, right? But before we get into this, I just want to remind you in my playlist, my important playlist, there's this video called Marriage in China Tanks as Men Cannot Pay the Bride Price, right? It's so obvious. The women aren't interested in getting married, just like any other part of the world, right? They don't like men. So men have to bribe them, and the bride price is too high. Keep that in mind before we get into this guy here.
Alright, what is up, guys? So, this video is going to be split up into two parts. Part 2 will be uploaded tomorrow. I don't want to make this video too long, and I'm trying out my GoPro to record this video. So, let me know what you guys think about the quality of the audio and the video. I'm going to tell you guys the real reason why there's over 100 million leftover women in China, okay?
There are no leftover women. Those women are single because of choice.
And it's so easy to point the finger, right? Everybody wants to play the victim. You know, the man wants to blame the woman wants to blame the man. It's time for each and every one of us to, look in the mirror.
Hey, dude, you know, we're all to blame, right? Uh, Women are demanding a house and a car and money up front before she says yes to a guy. She's offering nothing in return. I want you to take a look at that video, right? So you are telling a flat out lie, Chinese historian. Women are to blame. There are 40 million bachelors in China due to the practices of one child per household, right? The mothers preferred the sons who would look after them. So they didn't bother with girl children, right? So there's 40 million bachelors out there. There is absolutely, you saying these 40 million lonely guys, they're not trying their best to get with the girls? No, no. There's one gender to blame here. So don't even bother with this. Can't we all just get along horse shit?
And have an honest moment of self-reflection. A lot of people don't want to talk about this.
Dude, there's nothing honest or self-reflecting about you trying to blame both genders for what one does.
But what's happening in China? And it's the same thing in the United States and Canada, in many countries in Europe. The real reason why so many people don't want to have children, even though, let's say, the lucky ones, let's say the ones.
No, no, no. Women don't want to have children. It's work and a pain in the ass, so they don't want to bother. And men don't really care about children. They care about getting with the woman. I'll say it each and every time. If some guy snatches up some woman and that woman decides she's never going to get pregnant, the guy accepts it. That's the way it works. Because the men don't want the children any more than the women do. Right?
That has made it to the top 10, top 5% of income earners. A lot of people don't want to have children. It's because they 100% believe that our world is going to shit, and they don't want to bring any children into this insane world because
No, no, no. The women aren't interested in getting together with guys. They're not interested in being pregnant unless they feel like it. Women get pregnant for two reasons. One, they're bored and it's kind of like a hobby, like gardening. Or two, they want to capture a male servant. The child's used as a means to attract them and hold them in power. The child is a hostage. Those are the two reasons women have children. In the past, it might have been different because the circumstances were different. But today, those are the two reasons.
the previous generation, they have made everything worse. It's extremely important for you guys to listen to this, okay? Listen, throughout the history of a human civilization, the next generation must surpass the previous, okay? If you don't surpass the previous generation, do you know what that means? The inevitable is that, the next generation will become extinct. This always has been the number one rule throughout.
Surpass. Well, that's just plain wrong. Look at why do we call the Middle Ages the Middle Ages? It was about 3 centuries long. Well, people basically lived the same way for generation after generation, right? Survival is not necessarily built on the next generation doing better. Just getting by is good enough.
Every single human civilization. We must improve, we must advance, and we must move forward. We cannot be moving backwards. Look at what's happened to this generation, okay? In our schools now,
When he says moving backwards, what he means is, hey, I want to get with the girls and the girls aren't interested. What can I do about it?
we're teaching young people that men can menstruate. We're teaching young kids that women have penises. We're teaching
Dude, so what? Are what you're talking about, does that make women demand that men pay them money? Huh? This has nothing to do with this. Matter of fact, I'll get into the original right here. Just a minute. Pause. Yeah. Look at this now. The wedding day, the bride demanded the fare to get off, sitting in the car to count the money. The groom, sorry, I won't marry. In other words, she was getting married for the money. What else we got here? The bride demanded 50,000 marriage ceremony fee at the wedding site, but after being rejected, she angrily threw the flowers and went away. You see that? When a woman gets married, is it wrong to ask for a car, a house, and a bride price, which is bribe price? Right. So in all these cases, it has nothing to do with this talk about the LGBT or the trans community or anything. These are straight women, historian, demanding wealth from men before they'll even look at them. These are loveless marriages, right? Not that I don't know if there's ever been a loveful one, to be honest.
teaching kids that it is okay for a 13-year-old boy. If you feel like you're confused about your body, it is okay to cut your penis off. We're teaching young 12-year-old girls that it is okay if you feel like you're trapped in the wrong body. It is okay for you to get your uterus removed and to get a double mastectomy, okay?
Yeah, but you can't teach people out of something they want. Vast majority of guys and girls are straight people and they want it that way. So don't even bother going here. No one cares about what, 4% of the population? I think it's less than 5% of these people. How's less than 5% of the people going to stop population from going on? Population growth.
To everybody that's a boomer, the silent generation, Gen X, you say that, oh, look at this generation. What a joke you guys have become. No, you guys raised this generation. You guys inherited the greatest wealth transfer in the history of humanity.
This is the only thing he says right, right? This is the only correct thing he says. It's always the same thing. The boomers should be ashamed of blaming the next generation because the boomers were notorious for fighting with the generation before them. They used to have those buttons that would say, "Don't trust anyone over 30." Right? So what do? They learned nothing. But he's right about this, which is something, buddy, you should take to heart. If you're going to argue this, then realize that it's this generation talking about, maybe changing your gender is not to blame either, right? So you're putting the blame on this generation.
humanity, both in the East and the West. Yet you have completely destroyed this world. You have FUCK'd our world into a coma. I'll give you an example. Way back in the day, up until the 1980s in China, it was mandatory. Every single Chinese woman must be a virgin on her wedding day. It's
Really? So do you believe that all these women were virgins? I don't. Women cheating has been a thing in every culture, in every era. They would simply lie, right? And even back then, even if you could say a majority of them were, which is highly doubtful, the fact is these women had an interest in being virgins to sell themselves. Now they don't need to do that. They can just start an OnlyFans and they sell themselves that way, right? So this virgin talk is drivel. And it's really just you exposing yourself. You hate the idea that a woman has been, a goddess has been touched by one of you low lives. That's what it is. Just more man hatred.
the exact same thing in the West, right? This is inevitably the worst time in history to be a man. And I've
That really worse than, say, like being a Frenchman during the Napoleonic Wars, getting a toothache, pre 1800s. Or was that or maybe the better era was the saber-toothed cats tearing into us when we all we had were pointed sticks to defend ourselves. This is by far the worst era to be born in.
brought up this topic before, to all the ladies, right? And, maybe some guys are okay with your previous body count. They're okay with your past. What's gonna happen, when you get married, a couple bachelors show up. They say, dude, I used to your wife every single day. No,
Well, who gives a shit? Most people have sexual history. And you're only angry over this because you don't like other men and their dicks somehow ruin your girl. If it's so bad, how come that the opposite sex doesn't react like this? If she finds out her boyfriend had 20 girlfriends before, she considers him a catch, right?
children throughout the history of humanity has dealt with this level of humiliation. Okay, I mentioned this every single day growing up. I had to put up with that every.
Really? So how about the eunuchs? In the harem in the old days, right? You're grown, you hit puberty, you think you're going to have a great time, and they cut your balls off and say, there, you're going to guard all these beautiful women, and you're never going to touch a drop of the water. I'm sure there were many, many times in history that men have suffered tremendous humiliations.
Single day, someone will come up to me. Oh, dude, I heard that the mechanic Jerry your mom last night. Oh, dude, my uncle used to your mom every single day after she divorced your dad. Divorce and female sexual promiscuity has never ever been okay in any civilization throughout history. And look.
Well, men have never liked men, and therefore they're upset when their women are touched by other men. That's all you're saying, dude.
At what the modern men have to put up with now. For my dad and my mom, they didn't have to pay for any of their houses in China. It was given to them by the Chinese Communist Party. My dad.
If this is so good, how come you're here in Canada? You're living in Canada, are you not? In my country? Okay. Why? You're getting all this free stuff. This says a lot about your character, your parents' character. Chinese historian, that your father was giving all this free stuff and used it just to off to another country.
Dad, he also had a pickup. He had a cell phone that was all given to him. When my dad and my mom, when they chose to go back to school, they only had to go back to school for 2 years to get a credential in order to get a solid paying white collar job. They had a dormitory that was provided for them that they could stay
Sounds great. So why did they come to this country for?
in for free. They also had a meal plan, and every single meal was paid for by the Chinese Communist
You're making your parents sound like ingrates.
Party. However, that is no longer possible today. Think about what's happening in the West, right? And all the previous generations, all the Gen X, all the boomers, they keep saying that, oh, look at this generation. You're all a bunch of bums. You're a bunch of losers, okay? Back in the day, when I was 25 years old, okay, I was already married with 2 children. I already owned a home. I had a family van, and I also had a fishing boat. I also
Well, you know what a bunch of bullshitters the generation was before you. They got he got everything for free, and now he's shitting on your generation. Right. There's there's never been a time where it hasn't been, I got mine, you get yours.
had my own sports car. Okay, here's the thing. I've told you guys before. So in 2002, my dad, he sold his house in China. He sold his pickup. Both of these were given to him by the energy company that he worked for. He did not have to pay for them. So the cash he got from selling his home in China, also selling his car, that was enough to buy a home for cash in Canada for 100.
Wow. That's incredibly ungrateful. So he was giving all this free stuff, sold it, and said, screw you to the country that was so good to me. Exactly why would I want that kind of person here in mine? No offense.
$160,000 Canadian. That's $120,000 US. And that was back in 2005. That's really not that long ago. Just look at how much the housing market has crashed in Canada. It has become impossible to own a home unless you already have one previously, and then it's easy for you to sell one and buy a new one. Or if you have a super rich millionaire parents that can help you. But with those exceptions, it's become 100% impossible for youths today. Someone that I used to work with during
I agree with all this, but remember, you're talking about global population collapse. Hey, dude, women love men for who we are. They don't need a grand lifestyle for richer or for poorer, right? Hey, think about all those third world countries that are overpopulated. Huh? So it's not really money that provides the children necessarily, right? It's all about getting the woman how much she cost.
my co-op. So I used to go to a Georgian college. I was actually in the heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning program. So in order to graduate, I had to do a 4-month co-op. And I worked at this HVAC company. One of the guys I worked with, he told me that, he bought his house in Canada in 2006. 2006, that's less than 20 years ago. This is a 3-bedroom, fully furnished house with a garage and a finished basement. He bought his house in 2006 for $140,000 Canadian or $105,000 US, okay? By the way, back in 2006, Canada still allowed only a 5% down payment on houses. Back in those days,
This is all very interesting, but you do realize China's the third largest country in the world. So you're saying your father, instead of just finding any other spot in China, decided to cross an entire ocean, the biggest one, to come to Canada, right?
people in Canada, if you want to purchase a home, a 40-year mortgage was still allowed, okay? So his down payment for his house was $7,000.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I don't care about the economics. You're talking about the population collapse. So yeah, I might have to skim through, guys. Let's start here.
How crazy that sounds? Every single person, they had life on the easy mode in the previous generation. And on top of this, right, let's talk about dating and marriage, okay? So let's take my maternal grandfather, for example. so he was pretty much a bum. Okay, he never made much money, and early on in his life, he caught some kind of a serious disease. It could be polio. I'm not 100% sure, but he could never walk properly. He has always had to use a cane, even since he was 20s. So this guy, he's 5'4", completely broke, no money. He smokes, he drinks, he walks with a limp. Yet he got to marry my grandmother when she was an 18-year-old virgin. She
Well, what were your options for your grandmother? That's the question of this. Maybe she had no options. Maybe the only other option was be single and work heavy labor jobs by herself. That was the only option she had. So having your grandfather as a workhorse was better than going it alone. That was her options. She wasn't a better person, dude. She just lacked options. And as you can see, women have loads of options now. And so the mask is off. So they don't want to deal with men. Your grandmother got together with your grandfather because he did the heavy lifting, period.
gave birth to 5 children in total. 3 of them made it to adulthood. Of course, I mean, they had many disagreements in their life, and obviously they had to work out through their rough patches. But I asked them, okay, did divorce ever come to mind for you guys? And my grandmother and my grandfather, they always said no, because that was always taught to them since day one. That the most important thing
No,
to
no, it wasn't because they were taught. It's because your grandmother lacked options, right? I'm tired of hearing this, that people are blank slates and it's through some outside force that taught us different. No, what it is, this is the actual teaching here, right? Uh, Women gain options and then they look at one another and say, hey, uh, who needs men? Let's just enjoy the easy life on our own because they don't give a shit about being with men, right? Today's women have options. Your grandmother didn't. It's that simple, right? If she had divorced her husband, where would she go? Who was going to look after her? She get retirement? Was it enough to get by? Come on, dude. Don't start with this horseshit.
you in Confucius ideology in China was that the nuclear family was king. That was always number one. And
It's Confucianism was dropped by women soon as it wasn't necessary. If if your great grandmother taught your grandmother that she should be a virgin and never divorce, is because your great grandmother looked around and said, "We don't have any other options." Let's hope that your your workhorse husband lives as long as he can. That's what she said to her, right? All these, this isn't done out of morals and principles. The women of earlier generations thought about survival. They said, we can't survive without a male servant, or at least not survive as well, right? This is what's so annoying.
and the greatest sin you can ever commit in your lifetime is breaking apart the nuclear family. And the greatest sin you can commit in life is breaking your marriage vows. And the greatest sin a Chinese woman can commit is to sleep with more than one man in her lifetime, because they were always taught 从一而终, to be remain faithful to one man for their entire lifetimes.
So here it is. This has nothing to do with global population. This is about other men getting a taste, which pisses losers like you off.
However, Chinese schools they stopped teaching these ideologies because back in the day, this system worked. China had virtually no divorces, and even through the
It
ring.
wasn't the system, it was the situation. China is becoming first world, if it's not already. It is first world. And in the first world, when life becomes easy and women can get easy jobs, this is what they demand. They can drop the mask. They can stop pretending that what they to follow these silly morals that never existed.
Marriages, you think that oh, these Chinese women that were being abused, they were not happy, right? So I've talked to thousands and thousands of these older Chinese grannies. Almost every single one of them, yes, they were arranged to be married at 17, 18, 19, okay? Almost every single one of them was happy. And look at what
I
sad.
suspect they were arranged far earlier than that because the man was there to look after her, right? It's no different than when you're 30 and you start putting away for your retirement. Retirement's 35 years away, but you start saving for it, right? Well, maybe not 30, but definitely 40. And it was the same way. I bet how many little girls in China had arranged a marriage as soon as they were born? Because marriage wasn't about sex and fidelity. It was about locking a man into servitude for her.
Happened to modern women, okay? You have the freedom, you have the choices to choose any man you want in this world. But every single woman, they're always unhappy when they're married. They're unhappy when they're in a relationship. They're not happy when they're divorced. They're unhappy when they're single. They're unhappy at work. They're not happy when they're not at work. Look at what society has done to modern women. We've turned all of our women into a bunch.
No, 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 no. Women have made modern society. Society has become what it is at women's demands. This is what they want. If they're unhappy, all it means is that women are empty and have no internal lives. Once you take care of all the needs, they have nothing else to shoot for. That's all.
Bunch of feminists that absolutely hates men. They say we need to crush the patriarchy. They say we need to destroy everything in our society. They're turning into a blue and green haired lesbians, okay? They have a skulls tattooed onto their forehead.
Really? So these women here, are they blue-haired lesbians? Let's take a look. Like these, it seems like they're all fairly pretty girls. They wear long hair. They wear makeup. They dress feminine, right? How about this one? Here's one. Nice long hair, pretty face. I don't see any tats. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about?
Forehead. They're getting nose piercings and tongue piercings. Some college students in Canada and the US will reach a body count of over 100 men before.
So what difference does it make if she's getting studs and tats? If obviously men are going to bang her no matter what, if she has a huge body count. Again, body count doesn't stop you from marrying someone. She can turn around and say, hey, by the way, I'm just going to be faithful from you from now on. And you know what? It works. If some woman who has a high body count says to some guy like that was all in the past. Now I'm a one-man woman. You would take her up because I see it all the time.
They even graduate the university. What
Oh,
has
by the
happened?
way, dude, why are you going on about women so much? I thought both genders were to blame.
To our world. How could you guys do this to us, okay? I'm talking about people like my mom and my dad. How could you guys do this to this generation? You guys had your education paid for. You had your houses paid for. You had your health care paid for, right?
Yeah, that should tell you something, dude, that there's really no differences in the generations at all. Human beings are the same animal now as we were 50,000 years ago. This is how we behave when we're in this environment. Do you see that? The generations before you and me were not better. They were not more moral. They were not any more principled, right? They did not care about their children more. All that has turned out to be horse shit. I'll skim through to see if there's anything left to deal with this. Or worship of the nuclear family, which, by the way, is just a unit where the woman controls who's in charge. But listen to this.
In China today. Perhaps if the wars never became a rampant epidemic in China. Okay, by the way, it is a rampant epidemic. So in 2019, China's divorce rate officially eclipsed 50%. Okay, there were 4.3 million divorces in China. Out of the 4.3 million divorces, 3.2 million was filed by Chinese women. And
there you go. About 70 to 75% were done by women. They're the ones who initiate it because they're not interested in being with us, dude. My man Eric Schiedler said it perfectly. Women get married knowing that they're going to get divorced. It's not maybe, knowing, right? So women do not want to be with men. And you have to come to terms with this.
that it's a fact. So I'll tell you guys something extremely destructive. Okay, there are laws, there are policies that government officials can put in place to improve the situation. I simply don't understand why the elites are not doing this. For example, I mentioned before in Canada prior.
You mean forcing women to marry men or give birth to children? Is that what you're suggesting?
To 1969, before Canada allowed no-fault divorce, the divorce rate in Canada was roughly only 10%. It was in 1969 Canada allowed.
Wow. So before no-fault divorce, the divorce rate was lower. No kidding.
No-fault divorce. Then Canada's divorce rate jumped up by 500%, literally within 2 years. Right now it is roughly at 50%, and it has.
Good. So you're admitting that women never wanted to be married to men. The only reason they weren't divorcing is they weren't allowed. Now that's a great marriage. You got to stay married to me because you have no choice. That's what I want my marriage to be about.
Has stayed at 50% for the next 30, 40, 50 years. I'll tell you guys how destructive so no-fault divorce is, okay? Not just no-fault divorce. I'm talking about no-fault contested divorce. Ladies, if you walk into a marriage, okay?
Again, why are you talking to women? I thought both genders were to blame. Notice when he talks with the guys, he only talks about guys not being able to get resources, to get finances, right? To bribe these women into a family, right? But all the real decision making he's putting on the women because he's recognizing that they are the ones that make the choice. They are the selectors, right? So I'm not going to go any further with this because really this guy's just pissing me off. Just another tradcon loser. Either make your money and bribe your fake love into your life or be single and shut up. This in between where men beg, right? And posture, begging and posturing. I can't get a girl. So let's talk about the population collapse. Like I gave a shit, right? Tell me something, dude. Those sultans with the giant harems, they weren't impregnating every one of those women, were they? So they were stopping the population from growing. They're hoarding all these women to themselves. Other guys could have been impregnating them, right? Right. So this has nothing to do with population collapse or growth or whatever. You can't get any. And frankly, I don't give a shit.